Hi, I'm Tony McMahon. Now, you're probably all familiar with the movie Bedknobs and Broomsticks. You know, who isn't? And the involvement of a witch in stopping the Nazi invasion of England. But did you know that that movie is based on a true story? Because in 1941, a coven of British witches met secretly, and their plan was to stop the Nazi invasion of the British Isles. And these were dark times. This was when Europe, continental Europe, was falling by degrees to Adolf Hitler. Paris had fallen to the Third Reich, and the witches met that year in 1941 to, and this is how they described it, to raise a cone of power against the Nazis and stop them in their tracks using magic. Now, how do we know about all this? Well, because one man that was involved, Gerald Gardner, who was kind of the inventor of modern Wiccanism, if you want, he talked about it in a book after the war about the meeting of this great coven in the New Forest, where hundreds of witches, he said, got together and they conjured spells to create a fog and mists in the English Channel that would make it impossible for the Nazis to invade. Gardner also claimed that at the time of the Spanish Armada in 1588, when the Spanish were trying to invade England, and during the Napoleonic Wars in the early 19th century, when the French were trying to invade England, that witches had conducted similar exercises, had rained cones of power, as he called it, to stop those invasions as well. In other words, witches had been protecting England for centuries. His book was called Witchcraft Today and was published in the 1950s, and it met with a mixed response. One sarcastic journalist asked, well, if English witches could meet to stop Hitler invading, well, why wouldn't Nazi witches meet also in Germany to help with a Nazi invasion? And who could tell which group of witches would be more powerful? Gardner died in 1964, and as I said, he did a lot to popularise Wicca in England at a time when organised religion, traditional Christianity, was very obviously in decline, and people were looking for new spiritual beliefs, new meaning. The idea of a witch, an English witch, a quintessential English lady who is actually a witch, stopping the Nazis underpins the plot of the movie Bedknobs and Broomsticks, which came out in 1971. A very unusual Disney movie, I think. It's very different from a lot of Disney's traditional movies. But I'm sure that the idea for that movie came from the large amount of publicity that surrounded Gardner and his coven of witches in the New Forest stopping Hitler. What we see in the movie is a woman called Eglantine Price, who teams up with three children who've been evacuated from London during the Blitz, during the Second World War, and together they use fantastical powers to stop the Nazis. Now, I won't issue now a load of spoilers to destroy your enjoyment of the movie. Go and watch it. But that's essentially what happens in Bedknobs and Broomsticks. Witchcraft was very big in the 1970s. It was estimated in one newspaper article that 1 in 20 people in Britain in 1972 were engaged in witchcraft in some way. And it's definitely becoming more popular today. And I think particularly among Gen Z, among the so-called Zoomers, you're seeing an increasing interest in both witchcraft and folklore. And I've noticed at certain bookstores, the witchcraft section is definitely expanding. So I look forward to seeing some spells being cast, let's say, to stop Putin, for example, President Putin of Russia, aiming his nuclear warheads at us or causing chaos in the Ukraine. Maybe witches can be a force for good in today's very hectic world. Thank you and goodbye for now.